Welcome to F260, week 42, 1 Corinthians 7 and 8, entitled Scriptural Principles of Marriage. Highlight verse, 1 Corinthians 7, 1-2. Now, concerning the things whereof I wrote you unto me, wherefore ye wrote to me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Explaining this, it is all right for some not to marry, but because sex outside of marriage is sinful and the difficulty of controlling the sexual appetite, it is best for most people to marry. Applying this in the remaining verses of this chapter, Paul sets forth the scriptural principles that should be embodied in a Christian marriage. The first point he makes is that sex is not to be used as a tool by the husband or wife to manipulate the other, but as a natural expression of their love for each other. In verses 7-9, Paul states that it would be best for some men and women to remain single as he is, so as to have more time to devote to the Lord. But he realizes that to be able to live a celibate life is a gift from God. And because of strong sexual desires, it would be best for most to marry than to be consumed by their unfulfilled passions. In regard to marriage, where both are believers, in verses 10-11 he says, "Wives, don't divorce your husbands, but if you do leave, either one, remain unmarried, or two, be reconciled to your husband. And husbands, don't divorce your wives." Although Jesus gave no specific teachings on divorce in mixed marriages, in verses 12-16, Paul says, "Christian husbands, do not divorce your non-Christian wives if they are willing to live with you. And Christian wives, do not divorce your non-Christian husbands if they are willing to live with you." God commands the believing mate not to leave the unbelieving one, because God can use the believing one to get the unbelieving one saved, and he can use both to get their children saved. It says in Malachi 2:15 that God made a husband and wife to be one, so that their children would be godly. However, should the unbeliever finally and irredeemably desert the believer is not bound in such circumstances. God has called us to live in peace. The object is to win the unbelieving spouse to Christ. But when an unbeliever chooses to desert his or her partner and marriage vows, then reluctantly the believer may let that one go. That is, sadly, accept the divorce with the right to be married to another. My response: in some nation, when both spouses are believers, remarriage is permissible only if they are separated by death of one of them, and remarriage is not permissible by divorce. However, in mixed marriage, the believer may remarry if he or she was deserted by the unbeliever. Amen and God bless.